So, in today's show, we have a very good friend of mine and absolute superstar, Dr. Rhona Eskander. Dr. Rhona is one of the most well-known faces in UK dentistry. She has one of the top clinics in London at the Chelsea Dental Clinic, where she has a list of clients, which is a who's who of A-list celebrities, with everyone from Rita Ora to Mel B. Rhona is also my business partner as co-founder of PÄRLA toothpaste tabs, and together we're taking on the world of single-use plastic toothpaste tubes. And so over the last couple of years, I've really got to know Rhona very, very well. We've been friends for a long time now. But over the last few years, I've really got to know who she is. And I can speak from the heart by saying she's an incredibly hardworking, very, very passionate and very ethical and driven individual. And I'm very looking forward to sharing those insights this evening for those people who may think they know Rhona through social media, or they've seen her on that route. As we were discussing before the call, Rhona, it's very easy to think you know someone, but actually when you go beneath the surface, you find out so much more. So anyway, how are you doing? Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sai. That amazing introduction. It always makes me blush. I'm always like, when this happens, like, what am I meant to do? It's like people singing happy birthday to you. You just kind of sit there like awkwardly. But it's so nice to hear. I'm good. I've been super busy. I think we all have during this pandemic, but really happy to be here chatting to you today.
Yeah, it's so great to have you on, and obviously we chat a lot with PÄRLA stuff each week, but we don't get a chance, especially over the pandemic, to sit down and have a chat. So I'm really looking forward to deep diving on this call. I mean, let's start off with the pandemic and how you've been dealing with it. I mean, we launched PÄRLA back in March 2020, so right at the start of the lockdown. You took over the Chelsea clinic, I think a couple of months before. Was it January last year or a little before that? How have you been managing with everything?
Okay, I wish it was January because I'd have a couple of months to kind of get my ducks in a row. It was actually 1 week before the national lockdown in March. So literally,
it was March
I was on
as well.
holiday in the morning. Yeah, so it was 1 week before Boris made the announcement. So literally, it took ages to complete because I've been trying to buy the practice for a really long time. And like, you know what it's like lawyers and all that kind of thing. It takes a really long time to sort all that stuff out. Anyways, all was complete, exchange done. And then all of a sudden, the national lockdown came. And obviously, I remember being in the Maldives and COVID was being talked about, but I thought coronavirus was just a bit of a joke. And I remember seeing loads of tourists walking around in the Maldives wearing signs saying, "I'm not Chinese." And I was like, this is really odd, And then all of a sudden, people, I know, I found it mental. And then all of a sudden, there was all this hype in our hotel and everyone was like, oh, they're thinking about getting everyone to leave the hotel. And I suddenly thought, oh, will dentistry be shut? And I was convinced that we would still stay open, or at least they would utilise us as professionals within the scope of NHS practice, what was going on in the hospitals. We've got the skills. And I think it was a really difficult time emotionally, financially. I had no idea how to run a practice. I didn't have time to get things sorted. But ultimately, what I wanted to do is that I wanted to just grow the business, and then we were stuck at home. And I think as health professionals, I speak for a lot of dentists, we felt really undervalued within the health sphere because we were like, okay, we've been told that we can't do anything. Yet we're actually willing to help and go on the front line. I know a lot of us were, and we weren't allowed to even do that or even provide emergency care for our patients. So I think it was probably one of the hardest things I had to deal with in 2020. And I'm very adaptable, as you know, Sai, because we work together. And I try really hard to, move along with adversity and see an opportunity in that adversity. And I thought, you know what, Rhona, take things online for a bit. Obviously, you were incredibly creative with PÄRLA and how we could push things online. I, was on board with what you were saying, and I took some of those aspects within, for my own business. So I was doing online consultations, I was doing lives. I tried and failed TikTok, still trying and failing TikTok. So
you're definitely not failing, mate. You're smashing it.
But ultimately, the thing is, it was a difficult time. And I think it's always going to be a difficult time to buy a practice, no matter what position you're in, whether you're overtaking a practice from, in a family situation like you are, or whether you're buying it from, a place where you're working or starting a squat. But I think within the pandemic, it was even harder because it was so testing, and I almost felt helpless because I just couldn't be there. And, there was staff turnover, etc. But as I said, I think like anything in life, and not just dentistry, you have to adapt. You just have to adapt to the environment because life is unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing predictable in life is that it will be unpredictable, which I think is the best way to look at everything. If you, I was listening to a really interesting podcast recently with Brené Brown and Simon Sinek, who I know you know well, he
Tell me on that.
they were talking about finite and infinite thinking, and how if you think finitely, as in finite thinkers try to control everything, and they think that they can keep everything. It's a game that they can play, and there's an end point, and you can win it. But actually, there is no end point. You can't win it. You can't control it. The only thing that you need to be aware of is that everything's going to change, and you might think you've got all your ducks in a row, and then suddenly everything gets knocked over, which I think has happened to all of us this year. But anyway, I mean, you got through it, and I mean, when I say you got through it with incredible prowess. How's the practice now? How are things going?
I'm really lucky because I've been busy, and I think they're calling it now. I mean, as you know, I do a lot of stuff with Invisalign, and they're calling it now, the Zoom boom, because patients now more than ever, I think, are valuing healthcare. So I think that number one, they're obsessing over the way their teeth look because they have nothing else to do. Number two, they're constantly faced with their own image. Like right now, I'm looking at my face, being like, oh God, like I need a face. And,
end of a hard day of work.
Yeah, literally. And I think ultimately the thing is that patients now more than ever are seeing value in healthcare. I think that they're seeking professional opinion and expertise, whereas before they didn't really care. But I think with an onus now on the medical field, us relying on the medical field to get us through the pandemic, there's a new kind of found respect in a way for professionals. Not only from a health perspective, but also a value in the way that they look and the way that they feel and everything like that. So it's growing the business. And I think that we're really lucky because patients are coming in from a value point of view, and they're feeling very incentivized to look after themselves. So it has been busy. Sometimes it's overwhelming, I'm not going to lie, and I mean, you run a 7 surgery practice, which is like mental to me, because sometimes I feel you want to be in control of everything all the time, but you simply just don't have the brain for it. And with all the other stuff that's going on in our lives, PÄRLA, social life, well, not social life at the moment, but personal life, family life, all that thing, it's so hard to balance all of that. And I think that's really key. I'm grateful for what's going on in the practice, but I think there's definitely a stressful, darker side to it all that we don't talk about,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's definitely get into that, because I mean, there is so much stuff. I mean, me and Meg, I'm very lucky in many ways in that I have Megan to co-run it with me. And to be honest with you, when I say co-run, she runs it. Like I do not do the large majority. I don't do the large majority of the administrative side of the practice. But also I'm lucky in the fact that my parents have been there for 35 years. So, and we have team members, a lot of the team members have been there for that whole time. So they support me in the fact that I know I can trust them 100%. And I know, speaking to a lot of my colleagues, and just in business in general, if you have a few people who care about your business as much as you do, then you're incredibly lucky, because most people that work for you will not care about your business as much as you do, and that's normal because it's not their business. But it's such hard work, and when I know, I'm sure you that you're the same. You get so many DMs from young dentists asking about, and I did a Q&A on Instagram recently about, and so many of the questions were from young dentists saying, how do I start my own business? How do I start my own practice? How do I be a principal? And I feel that it's our obligation to instill in them the fact that it is it's a double-edged sword. It's the most rewarding thing. I could never work for anyone else. But it really makes the dentistry look like the easy bit when you come to running a practice of your own.
100%. I think it's a really interesting one, because sometimes I feel that young dentists, they really want this kind of like mathematical formula on certain things, you know. So even sometimes I get questions if I post something clinical being like, what composite do you use? Or what cement do you use? Or what technician do you use? And I'm like, I feel like you're missing the point almost. And like you're saying, and it's the same with the practice questions, like you're focusing on the things that don't actually ensure that you are successful in the way that you want to be, because really the type of composite you use is irrelevant. You know, how to buy a practice is irrelevant, or even buying a practice. It's about all the other things that leads to the outcome that you desire, because the outcome is a great composite, a great veneer case, or a successful running practice. So you need to think about all the other aspects that lead to that. And for me, that's so much more on non kind of concrete stuff. It's about the sort of what I call the fairy stuff, which I like, which is about, you know, building trust, building communication, understanding people, investing in courses, you know, practicing and failing, you know, all those different things. So I personally think that, you know, when you look at somebody that and you want to emulate what they're doing, i.e. owning a practice or doing the kind of dentistry that they want to do, you need to understand more about the type of person that you want to be like is. So what I mean, like, for example, you and I both massively looked up to Miguel Stanley, right? I remember actually you posted a video of Miguel about 5 or 6 years ago, and that video was on Vimeo, and this was before social media. And on that video, you had said how inspiring that video was. Now, for me, that was really important. I actually found him through you. But what inspired me about Miguel was his passion, was his drive, was the motivation, what he had built. Not so much like, how did he learn to go speak to the camera? You know, it's like, what did he do? No, it was about the values portrayed. Do you see what I mean? And I think that from that, I recognize that speaking to an audience is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And that's actually what inspired my journey on social media to like build a profile and so forth. So I think that that's a really key takeaway message, especially for young people. What if you want to achieve something, why is it, you know? And there isn't this basic formula, because there's something more to it. And I think it's about understanding that, like knowing your own why. Simon Sinek.
Yeah. Mentioned again. I completely agree. And I think it's so easy in a small, tight-knit profession like ours to just look at the people around you and say, right, what are they doing? Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. And there's so much FOMO in dentistry, I think, in everything. When one person does something, everyone else feels like they have to do the same thing almost. But I completely agree with what you're saying. Like, before you jump into buying a practice just because you think that's the next thing, or before you jump into being a specialist because you think that's the next thing that you should do because all your mates are doing it, you need to look at actually, what is your purpose? What is your greater goal? And what do you hope to achieve by going through it? Because buying a practice is not easy. And if you want to get through that hardship, then you need to know why you're doing it. So I think that's a really important thing. But I mean, the Chelsea clinic seems to be going from strength to strength. What are your key recipes to success? I guess if anyone who has just bought a practice, let's say, or just starting a small business, even, let's take it away from dentistry. What do you think's been the keys to your success? Because I mean, your growth. I mean, you built as an associate, as a dentist working in this practice, you've built an incredible following and an incredible list, and obviously now it's your own business. But what do you think the keys to your successful growth have been over that time period?
Do you know what? And I will always say this, I will say it is consistency and motivation. And I think you have to really want something to make it work, and you have to be consistent with you and your actions. I'm a massive believer in manifestation. I'm sure you are too, Simon. I actually haven't had that conversation with you, but I genuinely believe that you can manifest you can manifest the life that you want. And it's so funny because one of my favorite influencers who I always talk about is Melissa's Wardrobe, and she talks about how she worked in a supermarket, and now she's like living a bougie lifestyle, like going on Stormzy's private jet, and she like talks about how she's one of the strongest manifestors. And the reason is, she says, like, you can't say, oh, I want a red Ferrari, and then it will appear on your driveway. It doesn't really work like that, but you have to manifest your intentions. So what I mean by that is that I had a vision. I had a very clear vision. And I always have clear vision. So even with PÄRLA and dentistry and relationships and life goals and everything like that, I'm like, this is what I want, and this is what I want. And I actually have a reminder on my phone set every day. And this is a habit that I've done for the last, God knows, like 6 years, where I have a reminder on my phone which reminds me of the key 5 things that are important to me as a human being. So, you know, one of them will be kind of like respect, health, happiness, direction, you know, and I've got a 5th one there on my reminder. But the point is, it reminds me every single day of what my goals are, like with every action that I do. And, you know, health, for example, you may say, oh, that's a random one. But for me, if I don't have a day without exercise or, you know, being nutritious, you know, 80 or 90% of the time, I don't feel great. So that's a massive value for me. But I think it's about having a clear vision and working towards that on a subconscious level. So when you're working towards on a subconscious level, like even with PÄRLA, for example, I have a vision in my head of where I want the brand to go and where I want it to be. So therefore, our actions every single day as a business will hopefully reach that goal. It's not like suddenly I'll wake up and that goal is just there, you know, on my doorstep. But I think it's about being consistent with the actions that you need to take, but also willing to pivot. So what that means is that if something doesn't work, and we both know this really well with PÄRLA, you know, as a startup, if something doesn't work, you're willing to go back to your original position, your original goal, your original like motivating factor, and you go, this didn't quite work. We're going to turn it into a different direction slightly to make it work. So I think in a really long rambling way, it's about having a clear vision, knowing what you want, not following the crowd, as you said, just because everyone else is doing it, and working towards that vision. I think as well, Simon, for example, with you knew that you wanted to do a podcast for ages. And I know we even talked about it with regards to PÄRLA, for example, but it's something that you feel extremely passionate about. And whilst everyone's like jumping on the TikTok bandwagon as well, I was thinking, you know, Simon's, I mean, I'm sure you're going to jump on the TikTok eventually, but your passion at the moment lies within this sort of like podcast sphere, which is another influential part of the media world. But the point is that you've been consistent. You have a goal of where you want your podcast to take you. You don't listen to the noise around you, which is super important. And you're being consistent with how often you're doing it. You know, you're going to be willing to pivot if things don't go in the direction that you want. And I think those things are important, like really being consistent, motivated, and having clear goals.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a Stoic philosophy that says if you don't know in what direction you're traveling and you're sailing, then no wind is favorable. And I think that's such a wicked saying, because it basically means, if you don't know which direction you're going in, then you might have a really big win. But if you don't know which way you're going, then it may actually be a loss because you're moving in the wrong direction. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And if anything, not going against the grain on what everyone else is doing tends to work in our favor. I mean, toothpaste tablets was not in the rule book or in the training manual for dental school, right? And that seems to have worked out pretty well for us so far.
Yeah, but also on that note as well is that we've gone against the grain, being one of the first social media dentists. You know, we were one of the first ones on the platform, and we've gone against the grain because at dental school we're told that you have to be a person in a lab coat that doesn't show any emotion and has to maintain a total sense of professionality. Don't get me wrong, professionality is everything. But I'm not going to lie, the more that I show character and vulnerability as a human being, the more empathetic my patients are and the more they want to actually come and see me, you know. And I think that that's a really interesting thing, because you are almost challenging a social norm where dentists and doctors have to behave a certain way. And of course, you know, we have to be seen as people that patients and clients and stuff can come to, and, you know, that we have a certain amount of respect and authority. But I think you can also be human as well, and that actually makes you more likable as a professional and more trustworthy.
Yeah, I mean, I literally couldn't agree more. And the more I've developed as a dentist, ignoring the clinical element of it, but the more I've developed as a dentist in myself, the closer my professional persona and my actual real persona have come, to an extent where now I am 100% myself when I'm at work, which makes me so happy, because I'm actually who I'm meant to be all the time. I'm not work Simon and home Simon. I'm the same person the whole time. And that means that for my patients, some patients might not like me, just like some people might not like me, but at least I'm being myself. And those patients that do like me, and we're so lucky with this, with social media, because we get the people that are attracted to us, the sort of people that we are. And so I personally, what I find is that the large majority of patients that come and see me because they've seen me on social media, I actually get on with them really well. I don't really tend to have patients that I don't have a good relationship with who have seen me on social media, because they wouldn't come and see me if they didn't like me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Totally, because the thing is that they've already got to know you on social media, and you've developed, they've understood your personality and your persona. So I definitely think that this new wave of dentistry is something to be embraced. It's a longer debate than suitable for this podcast, but it's something that I feel really passionate about. And the funny thing is that, even recently, my TikToks are a bit ridiculous that I've been posting on Instagram, but patients have been messaging me being like, right, that's it. This TikTok video has confirmed that I really want to come to you because you're hilarious and I love it. And it's great. And I'm like, right, okay. And, and I think it really demonstrates, the new age thinking. And I actually even saw a doctor today, one of my really good friends, Dr. Wasim. He actually posted a screenshot where a patient, a potential client, wrote on to him, and he'd screenshotted it, saying, "Oh, I love how you're embracing change as a doctor. And these videos are really funny." And I think, we really forget that people want to see us as human beings as well. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's really important, and I think it is such a positive thing. It's been such a great thing for both of our businesses, I think. What's the negative side of it? I always talk about social media as a double-edged sword, and I'm very keen to be as honest and real as we can be on this chat. How have you? I mean, I'm sure you get a fair amount of trolling. How are you dealing with that? I know I've got a very, very thin skin. I'm not very good at dealing with trolls at all, and Megan will tell you that, and so will Miguel, because I've had many conversations over the years with him about this, because I know that he's struggled with it. But how do you deal with the trolls online?
Okay, so I'm glad that you're real, Simon, because it's so important to be real. I'm going to try and not get emotional about it, and I don't actually want to give trolls any more of a platform than they already have. We're human beings, and no matter what you do, just because you put yourself out there, it doesn't mean you have to expect or deserve hate or negative comments. And I think the worst thing is that trolls, by definition, did you know what a troll is? It's not actually a person, like, when you had like sort of those Barbie dolls and you had those like trolls that look like trolls. That's not actually what trolls are. Trolls comes from the word trolling when it comes to fishing. So when you're basically like trolling along so that the fish basically wants to bite on something, and then you can drag them along. So that's where the word actually originates from. And in that case, it means that these people are saying something for a reaction. They are saying something so that they can string you along, and they're waiting for you to bite, basically, to the bait that they're giving. It's really, really, really hard, and I've had a really tough time. And unfortunately, as my profile is building, I think that it's getting worse and worse. I think the last 6 months has been the worst time of my life. I've had... on Christmas Day, I was really sick with COVID at home with my sister, and I had a troll me, and I reported it to Instagram 3 months ago because the username was, available. I mean, it was a fake username. Instagram said, "Oh, we've researched this and there's nothing wrong with it." And it was, they were using expletives and being really offensive. And on Christmas Day, they were then trolling my mum and my sister with stuff about me and then change their name and then put stuff on. And, you know, they're not only attacking, they're attacking my physical appearance, they're attacking how I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, like, you know, all this stuff. And you can ignore as much as you want and delete. And I think, Simon, you can relate as well. There is a part of you sometimes that it just feels so hurt, and you're like, you doubt yourself, you know, like you're a human being. And I try and ignore. I think the best thing that you can do, and, you know, some people go, congratulations, you have a troll, it means that you're successful. And I'm like, you know, it's scary, because the thing is that I want to put myself out there beyond social media, you know, in other senses, you know, on other platforms, and, you know, I want to put myself out there. But this stuff makes you feel like you just want to hide away. And it's funny, because I treat some of the most influential influencers in the UK and celebrities, and some of them online and offline, you know, they come to me privately. And when I talk to them about it, they're like, the worst thing you can do is bow down to these trolls, because that's what they want. And what you have built is so much stronger. And that 95% of people that love what you're doing are the ones that are worthy. I do think as well that there's something to be said. I do think women get trolled more by other women. I don't think I've ever been trolled by a male, if I'm honest with you. I've never had a problem with any the terminologies that the trolls use suggest that it's a woman, because it's always about the way I look, if that makes sense, or something that you wouldn't imagine a man noticing or caring about. So it shows again, you know, how much society has to work on when it comes to the relationships between kind of females amongst each other, and the way that, you know, other females perceive females that put themselves out there. So it's a really interesting one. And I think that I'm getting a bit stronger, but I'm still not invincible. And I just think that there needs to be something done online about these people that are keyboard warriors, because, you know, they ruin people's lives. They really do. And, you know, I'm lucky enough that I've not got to the stage where I want to do something really harmful to myself. But, you know, we only need to look at someone like Caroline Flack, who got cancelled, you know, to understand the impact that it can have on people's mental health. You know, it was ultimately, you know, the trolls and the media exposure. And I think that dentistry now, with us putting ourselves out there, we're also at that risk of being scrutinized like celebrities in a way, because you're putting yourself out there, right? And I just think that if you do want to go onto this social media journey or put yourself out there, you need to be prepared that it's not all good. I'm not going to put those moments of me having a breakdown and crying and trying to get rid of a troll and not being able to, but it is part of the process. It's what comes with the territory. And unfortunately, you have to find a coping mechanism. I'm not saying that I have, but I'm not going to say it doesn't happen to me or anyone else successful that I know.
Yeah, I think the only continuity is that it pretty much happens to anyone who has a high profile. So we mentioned it before, but let's talk about PÄRLA. It's been a bit of a whirlwind experience, I think, for all of us involved, me, you, and Ads, over the last, I guess was it the start of 2019? Yeah. But I mean, tell me about, why don't you tell our listeners about why we started it, what it's all about, and what your experience of it's been so far.
Okay, so I have to say, and I'm not just saying this because you're my business partner, you took me out of a comfort zone, and you continue to take me out of a comfort zone. And I think that I am really lucky to have you as a business partner, because I genuinely think that you have something that not a lot of people have. Now, after gassing up Simon for like 3 minutes, 30 seconds, I'm going to go into why. We came to each other because both of us have been approached by lots of different companies to be ambassadors, do partnerships and all that kind of thing. And Simon, I think, has a knack for recognizing successful people around him and wanting to, you know, partner up, because I think you recognize the power of collaborations, partnerships, and you realize that, you know, people in numbers can work to your strength. And I think that that's another important kind of top tip, guys, also going back to the conversation that we had about, you know, achieving goals and being successful, is definitely hang out and associate yourself with people that you feel will, you know, bring you up and inspire you. Anyways, Simon then had come to me and said, listen, Rhona, we always get approached for different things. You know, have you ever thought about doing something together? And I have to be honest, I was so scared. I literally was like, this is way out of my comfort zone. I can't develop a product. Do I sit in a chemistry lab? Is this going to be like Breaking Bad? Do I have to sit with test tubes? I just didn't really understand how the whole thing worked. And I always was looked up to really, really inspiring entrepreneurs in my life. So, for example, I know Patrick Drake from HelloFresh and his story of how he left banking and then started HelloFresh. Dan Murray as well, how he left a 9-to-5 job and started 2 businesses. My life. So again, the whole subconscious manifestation was being obsessed with the minds of these entrepreneurs and how they made things work. And I didn't think that I could ever be part of that. I don't think I could ever be that entrepreneur. And actually, I always wanted to be because I was so inspired by those people. And Simon pushed me towards that. So when you had come to me, I was umming and ahhing, as you know, and Adarsh had also come to me asking me if I was interested in doing a product or, you know, a line together. And I'd said, you know what, let's all meet up. So we all met up together and, you know, we had a very fun dinner at Soho House. I remember it really well. And we came up with ideas and we decided that toothpaste tablets would be the future because Simon, being very eco-conscious as well, was really devastated at the plastic impact, not only within the dental industry, but also what the dental industry and the impact that it has on the world. And I live with my sister, who is like a kind of like channeling Ibiza hippie sort of vibe. And so, you know, she had introduced me to the recycling world and really educated me onto how we can make change. So we were all sort of on that level of like, we want to make a difference and we want to create a product that's in line with our ethics, but also something that's going to be a game changer. So we came up with the concept of tablets and we had researched, you know, how people brush their teeth not using toothpaste. And, you know, we then, I mean, I don't even know, but like Adarsh knows everyone. And all of a sudden we had a lab and then we were able to give them a formula. And, you know, it took ages. But I think, as I said, having a business partner like yourself that scrutinizes detail and notices things that I wouldn't necessarily notice is incredibly important. And I think that ultimately the three of us as a business bring something really unique to the table because we're all incredibly different. I would say that I'm the most non-detail orientated person in the world. So I always just think about the end goal and not the details, you know, as in like, and not the details. Whereas Simon massively is a detail orientated person. So he'll really notice things. And Adarsh is the numbers guy. So he notices details about numbers, but not necessarily the other aspects. So it's an interesting combination. And certainly, guys, I think when you if you're thinking about opening a business and having it, you have to understand that certain personality types may complement each other well, but it doesn't necessarily mean there aren't going to be moments of stress and friction because different personality types are like, I work this way, why don't you work this way? But ultimately, I think the most important thing is open communication. And we have had an open communication, open policy. Let's talk it out. You know, if we've got something on our minds, let's just be open to it, work around it. And I think that that's been the most interesting part of the journey because building the Dr. Rhona brand and the Chelsea Dental brand, it was almost like building a one-man band because I was just concerned with myself, my own vision and the way that I do and handle things. Whereas working with you and Adarsh is different. I've had to change things, pivot. I have to try and see things from a different point of view. And having a product as well is completely different, especially a product that is getting people to change the habit of a lifetime because you need to make them see a vision, you need social proof, and you know, all these things take time. So it's been one hell of a journey, but I think it's also been an incredible journey and something that's taught me life skills that I would have never learned just doing dentistry alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the really important thing for me with PÄRLA, because it is such a big moonshot. I mean, we want to change the toothpaste industry forever. We want to be the next Oral-B, only super ethical and built on clean ingredients and sustainable packaging and actually really changing the way that everyone brushes their teeth on a day-to-day basis, but we know that's a massive ambition. And so even if it does fail, which it might do, I really hope it doesn't, and it's going so well, but I really hope it doesn't. But it may, and if it does, then at least like to reflect back what you've said, I've learned so much from you. I've learned so much from ads, and I think for anyone who's looking at embarking on a startup, embarking on, if you call it a side hustle or whatever it is, actually to be working with individuals who you feel you can learn from, you build relationships which you can then potentially go on to future ventures together. Actually, even if that primary ambition fails, you haven't failed. Either you win or you learn. Those are the two options. There's no negative outcome. And I think having that changed thought process around failure is a really important thing, especially for dentists, because failure is such a part of all of our careers, and it's very easy to get very down when things fail, but everything fails, so you need to accept it and actually embrace it.
Do you know what? And I think the other thing is that you need to recognize as well that PÄRLA is getting people to change the way that they think, and also changing a habit. And even if the brand itself, doesn't survive, which again we hope it does, and it is going in the way that we want it to, it's the fact that you can say that you've challenged people's perceptions is sort of good enough for me, because I read stories all the time about how people change perceptions. And, one of my favorite stories is actually about Oatly, because Oatly's actually been around for like 20 years. And in the last 2 years, it's absolutely changed the way people drink coffee and tea. And I literally have to have oat milk latte every day. But the point is that this was 20 years ago when it was started, so none of the original founders are even involved. And having a startup and having a business like this is different. And I think Simon's right. You've got to get rid of that obsessive control like we do with dentistry. We love control in dentistry. And actually, I was doing some research for another presentation I'm doing. And one of the reasons why dentistry has the highest suicide rate is also because dentists scrutinize their actions and their outcomes so much that they can't cope on a psychological level. So, be rest assured, we're doing a lot better than a lot of people. So it's okay, sometimes to be like, what, this didn't work and I learned from it. I'm cool.
Absolutely. And as you say, I mean, and we've seen some stuff today around this, haven't we, with PÄRLA? But even if we're not the ones that make it the whole way, if we change the way people look at this issue, because it is a really major issue. Like, I genuinely could not use normal toothpaste tubes now, knowing that they last for 500 years, gradually breaking down into our ecosystem, in the same way that I don't use single-use water bottles anymore and I use my recyclable water bottle instead. Once you have that education, it's very difficult to go back to the old way of doing things. But as I say, even if we're not the ones that make it the whole way, at least we've made an impact, and hopefully a positive impact for humankind, because the climate crisis issue is something that scares the hell out of me, especially with one daughter and another child on the way. If the predictions come true as to the outcome that we have in front of us, then we have a really major issue on our hands, and it's up to all of us to make that one small change, I guess.
Absolutely. And we will.
Brilliant. Okay, we will. We're working on it. We're working hard. Okay, let's talk about, it's an odd topic for me to bring up, but I want to talk about it because I think it's really, really important. And it's about the gender gap. Female empowerment is something that I know is really, really important to you, and supporting other women and building other women up, certainly in dentistry and outside of dentistry as well. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there's a gender gap in dentistry, for example? Do you feel that you have challenges that I don't have, for example, as a woman in dentistry? What are your thoughts on that in 2021?
Okay, really, really, really interesting questions, because I think there's a difference. So, I have never felt, as a female, disempowered by my male colleagues in dentistry. both of my business partners, i.e. you and Ads, are male. I work with a lot of men in the practice. My website designer Prav is male. I get on really well with males, and I've never felt at a disadvantage or disempowered. In fact, even when I spoke up about a year and a half ago to I spoke up about a woman not being involved in this sort of dentistry online conference thing, and Christian Coachman actually sent me a message saying, I really admire you for speaking up and challenging why women aren't part of this, because we need more female leaders. So in short, I felt very supported by men within the profession. I know a lot of females don't feel that, and actually when I've said that, I've been challenged by dental females saying, oh, well, you're lucky you've had a good experience. That's not the experience that I've had. Do I feel that I'm a disadvantage as a female in general, bar dentistry? Yes, and I have to be honest with you about that. One of the reasons is because, as I said, I feel that females get more trolls and hate online than males, because there's so many different stigmas associated with being a woman. I feel particularly as a Middle Eastern woman, there's a lot more stigma as well associated. I feel it's been more challenging being a Middle Eastern woman, and again, that's because of these random comments and views that I get from narrow-minded people, saying you shouldn't wear that, you're Middle Eastern, you shouldn't do this, you're Middle Eastern. And that's more of a cultural thing. You're a woman from the Middle East. You're a woman. So that's more of a kind of cultural disadvantage as a woman. Do you see what I mean? Whereas if I was a male Middle Eastern, it would be probably easier. I find it difficult sometimes as well, because I'm at that stage in my life where I'm thinking about having a family and moving in with my partner and all that kind of thing in the next stage of life. And I actually get anxiety about the fact that I feel like I physically cannot look after a child and run the business the way that I am running the business. Something has got to give. I will need to give up stuff. I will need to spend less time building up my media profile. I will need to spend less time on X, Y, and Z, because a woman will look after a child, and obviously I'm excited about that part of my life, but I'm frustrated because I'm like, why can't he have the child? Do you know what I mean? So I think that certainly there is a challenge in that sense to being a female, and I think that there's also now too much pressure to bounce back, and I'm sure Megan has felt this as well. In a way, you have a child and you're expected to be back at work, on your feet, looking after people, running around, getting your body back in shape. There's so much pressure now as a woman to look a certain way, to bounce back from a body, to run a career and a family. And I think these are unrealistic expectations, almost like body dysmorphia promotion by fitness influencers online who got scrutiny, like the women that can run a career, run the world and run a family. It's unrealistic. Do you know what I mean? And I think that I feel sometimes at a disadvantage because I feel we're not being real, Do
you think those are expectations that you have of yourself, or do you think there are expectations from others?
I think that, again, the dark side of social media is that the way people portray their lives, certain people portray their lives, creates an expectation of women. Like I said, you'll see maybe a career savvy social media person that then has a baby, her body's perfect within a month, she's running her business, she's running a family, and she's just showing the highlights of all of that. And I think that creates an unrealistic expectation. And I think there's been that conversation online. I think that I'm going to try and move away from that, because I know myself, and I actually have suffered from burnout. I've had glandular fever brought on from stress and burnout, and I can get things that cause my body to basically just break down from stress and break down from these aspects. So when the time comes in my life where I'm going to have to give up the whole alpha career thing for a bit, I'm okay with it, because I think it's just something I want to do. I know I want to have a family, and I know that I want to give as much as I give to my work. So I think I'll do that. But because I've completely derailed, within the dental industry, I think that if as a female you are more vocal, and to the right male audience, they will support you and empower you as well. And I think that the male dentists now recognize the importance of a female voice within the industry to kind of move things forward. And as I said, I've never felt by any of my business partners, colleagues, associates disempowered or shut down.
Well, that's great. Great to hear as your business partner. But I mean, what do you think? What do you think? I mean, you've spoken a lot there about everything that you're doing, that you've pushed yourself to positions of burnout and stress. What do you think drives you to have to push yourself so hard? Because as dentists, you could quite easily work 3 days a week and not do any social media and still have a successful career. What do you think drives you so hard to push yourself to that level? And I don't say this in a negative way, because I'm exactly the same. And so I'm hoping that maybe you have an answer that I haven't found yet. But what do you think drives you? I mean, what's your purpose, do you think? What's your goal?
I really don't want to sound cheesy, but I was reading a book and watching a documentary with Reggie Yates, and it talks about leaving a legacy. And I mean, I know it sounds so cheesy, but I don't kind of want to leave my profession or the world, as it were, not having made some kind of impact or difference to the way that things are currently practiced. So, for example, when I set out on social media, or even like embarking on the relationships that I have now with journalists and press, I didn't do it because I was like, I want to be in the newspaper, or I want to be on TV, or I want to be verified on Instagram. I started that journey because I thought, I want to change people's perceptions of dentistry. I want to change the way dentists interact with patients so that we can totally challenge and change what society expects of us. And I think that, you know, if I'm remembered for one of the dentists that helped change the game on a kind of bigger scale, that's what drives me every single day. And that's what I think. And I think beyond the patients that I treat in the clinic, you're reaching thousands and hopefully eventually millions of people on these platforms that can reach wider audiences. That's what drives me every day. And obviously, increasing all of the interactions on Instagram, and then getting on TikTok, and then, you know, YouTube, and whatever it is that I plan to do, I want to increase my chances of reaching as many people as possible and making them feel like this is one of the dentists that changed the game. And I guess that's in a way leaving a legacy, but I'm not saying that in an arrogant way, because I don't think I'm like really important. It's just because I genuinely want to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's super important that you have that bigger ambition. I mean, we're very lucky in dentistry that actually we get to make a difference to an individual's life on a day-to-day basis. We have those amazing moments where someone turns a mirror around and starts crying because they're so happy with the confidence that you've given them, and that's not something to be belittled in any way. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same way in that I'm driven by something greater. And to be honest with you, the thing that's been the really revelationary thing for me in the last few years is that PÄRLA has become this big thing for me, so much bigger than I was expecting it to be, where actually I think that is potentially where we could make the biggest legacy of all, because we could genuinely make the world a significantly better place and protect it for the next generation.
No, I was just saying that I had that epiphany too, because I know that when you and I were walking around a few months ago for a very life-changing moment within the PÄRLA situation, which you guys will find about, I said to Simon, this is something that genuinely could change the lives of so many people, and it's a real calling.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned before there mental health, burnout, and you mentioned earlier in the day about fitness, and I know that's something that we both share a big passion for. What are the daily routines you have to keep yourself on the straight and narrow from a mental health point of view? Do you have a morning routine? You mentioned those 5, that little notification that you have, but what else are you up to keep yourself fighting fit?
So for me, exercise is a non-negotiable. It's therapy. My personal trainer is literally like my therapist. You know, getting that endorphin boost, like literally, and I'm a morning person, I can't exercise at the end of the day, but it just sets your mind straight. I love to also listen to a podcast that is or a audiobook that's non-related to dentistry, because I think it's important to get yourself and head out of that sphere. For example, I'm listening now to Matthew McConaughey's audiobook. I don't know if you've heard it, but I love it. And I find his voice so engaging. But listening to someone like
Green
him,
Lights?
yeah, I mean, he's just such a good storyteller. But listening to something like that, like even if it's just like 15, 20 minutes of an audiobook to take your mind away and transport you to another world or another time, I really enjoy doing that. And also having a list, a to-do list for the day. I mean, you don't want to get bogged down with the to-do list, but I know that if I have like 5 things on that list, I'm responsible for achieving those things in that day. And then I feel a sense of achievement and empowerment because I know that, you know, within my control. And it's not major things. It's be like, do this email or contact this person or, you know, do this report. So just so that you know. So I try to do like a list of no longer than like 5 things because I don't want to get overwhelmed, and the next day can be a list of other things.
How many of those things at the moment are TikToks? Because you're bashing out so many TikToks, and it must take you so much time to do. That it is a genuine question. It's doing social media content. I'm sure lots of people, because I think it's really important to talk about the reality of this, because I know a lot of people who literally will spend the day doing content creation. So does it take you a lot of time? Is it stuff that you must be, you're very creative with especially with your newer TikToks, well in general, but especially with your newer TikTok stuff. Is that something that just comes to you? Like, is it something that requires a lot of work from your end? How does it come to be?
Basically, I do find it quite stressful, I have to admit. But what I've decided to do is, TikTok have said that, you know, you need to be posting at least 2 or 3 times a day to try and elevate your profile. Basically, I'm literally not doing that well on it, by the way, but it's working well on Reels, so I'm glad that I've got that engagement. But anyways, so what I do is I actually spend about 20 minutes recording a TikTok every morning, and I'll do about 2 or 3 videos, and I won't upload them until like later on. Or I might spend you know, even for Instagram and things like that, like I'll have like drafts of different things. So actually, if I don't have time to think about a post like an hour or half an hour before, I've almost got a bank of content. And, you know, we do that with PÄRLA as well. So we'll have an entire content day where we can throw out the content over a period of time. So I think if you set in your mind like a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday to create actual content, then you can actually, then what you can do is that you can just post it as needed. It takes time, guys, and to be honest, like, I'm not an influencer in the sense that I have patients that make genuine money and livings off, you know, off actually creating content, but they spend hours and days and editing and full-on makeup. I mean, right now, 0 makeup. Like, I didn't know Simon was recording my face, but, you know, like this kind of stuff to create this kind of stuff to create really high quality content is a full-time job. And I would say I probably spend like 2 or 3 hours once a week doing it, and just have a bank of content that I release later on. And if it's throwaway content where I don't care about what it looks like or whatever, and I'm just trying to engage with the algorithm, I'll just do it spontaneously between patients.
Yeah, I think it's really important that people know how much work goes into these things. Otherwise, it's very easy to think, how do they look so good? And how is it so well captured? And how is the lighting so good? And it's like, well, because they literally have spent 3 hours setting up that scene.
I was actually really good at drama at school, just an FYI. So that's why my lip miming and lip syncing and memorizing lines is quite good.
There you go. That's why I'm obviously not very good at it. So one last thing before we get into the quick fire round. You mentioned fitness there. What has been the and I'm on exactly the same page as you. Fitness is a non-negotiable for me. Just like seeing my first patient of the morning, it's something that has to be built into every day for me, for my mental health, but also for my physical health, so that I can live to 120. But what fitness? What exercises have you found to be the most disproportionately beneficial for you in health and in wellness?
Really, really interesting one. I feel that weight training and resistance training has given me the most confidence and transformation in physique. But I feel that anything hit-based or outdoor where I feel the air hitting my face has helped my mental health. So on Wednesdays at the moment, I'm training at Paddington Recreation, which is basically like a running grounds near my house. And the personal trainer comes and trains me. And honestly, I trained in the snow like a week and a half ago, whenever it was snowing. And then I trained in the rain this week. But I don't care, because the benefits it gives me of being outdoors and getting that like endorphin rush and that adrenaline rush, and for me it just, my mind feels incredible for the first few hours of the day. I'm literally on a high.
Yeah, I saw those track videos. That looked really cool, actually.
Did you see the woman running the way?
Okay, cool. Well, let's get into rapid fire round now then. So I'm just gonna rattle through these, couple of words on each one. And I'll be interested to hear I actually don't know what your answers are to these questions, so I'm quite interested to hear them. So first one, what is the book that you would choose that's had the most impact on you? What's your favourite book of all time?
I'm going to be really random. Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because you know what? It was the first book I read about the coming of age. And for me, that just really resonated with the time of my life. And I still always remember it.
Brilliant. Love it. Was not expecting that. Okay. What poster did you have on your wall as a teenager? Teenage Rhona?
Leonardo DiCaprio. I was obsessed with him, and the Spice Girls. Both those.
You must have loved Mel B coming in then.
Oh my God, my 12-year-old self was living her best life when she came in, literally.
What would your last meal be?
Oh God, I'm going to be really boring, but I absolutely love lobster. So I think it would be lobster. No, I'm going to change actually. It's going to be grilled octopus. I love grilled octopus, Greek style.
Yeah, we are literally the same person. That's my favorite meal.
Love.
What is the best gig or musical live event that you've been to?
Do you know what? I went to the Drake concert at the O2 and it was amazing. I loved it. But I'm not really a gig person. I'm more of a theatre person. I love theatre, believe it or not.
I didn't know that about you. What's the best play you've been to?
Oh, definitely, hands down, People, Places and Things. It's one of the most beautiful plays I've ever seen in my entire life.
I've never heard of it. Is it in the West End?
Oh, Simon, yes. And it's basically about a alcoholic that checks herself into rehab and her struggle with trying to kind of deal with that and the people that she interacts with in rehab. And it's really beautifully done. But for me, there's something that makes me feel so alive watching people and their emotions on stage, whilst they're in front of you. For me, it's more powerful than film, actually. So that's why I'm very passionate about it.
Awesome. I did not know that about you. That's really cool. Okay, and last one for rapid fire round. What are you most grateful for right now?
I am most grateful for my support bubble right now. So that includes my friends and family that are basically getting me through this pandemic and helping, keeping me sane. But I think really there's nothing more important than human support and, human love around you to get you through anything in life. 100%.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, final question, the question that I asked to all of the guests on the podcast. What is the one small change that you've made that you wish you made earlier in life?
I think that one of my changes is saying no. Definitely saying no to things. So what I mean is that, going back to what you had said, where you had said a lot of people feel that they need to jump on the bandwagon when they see something, or typically if you get given an opportunity, you have to say yes. And whether that's being invited for dinner or being asked to do a lecture or a podcast or, an online something, you're like, oh my God, this is an opportunity. I have to do it. And then I've realized actually that, being the busiest person in the world is not a badge of honor. It doesn't define your success. And actually having the ability to say no to things, to reserve your energy for things that actually matter to you, is extremely powerful. And I think that's one of the greatest change that I've made in the last 6 months, again, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and I've definitely struggled with it myself. And I still slip up sometimes and say yes to stuff that I then later think I wish I had said no to, because things always seem really easy when you say yes to something. It seems like it's not a big deal, and then it comes around to it, and it actually ends up taking up so much of your time. And you think, well, actually, I'd just rather be at home with my family. Like, what am I doing here? Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good one. Brilliant, Rhones. Well, I could carry on this chat for hours, but we'll have to get you back on the show and restart the conversation when PÄRLA's moved on further through its evolution. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'm sure the listeners have got loads of value out of that chat, and if they don't know you, hopefully got to know the real Rhona even better. And I've learned some new stuff about you as well. I didn't know you loved theatre so much.
Thank you, Simon, as always, for being an amazing presenter and friend. And I'm really excited to watch more episodes because I love the podcast so far.
Oh, thanks so much, mate. All right, catch you later. Bye.